Chargers. Touchdown, UCLA.
With USC great and NFL stud, Frosty Rucker.
The Trojans back in front.
And LAFB founder Ryan Dyrud on the Believe Podcast Network and LAFBnetwork.com. This is your destination for Los Angeles football.
Joining me now on the LA Football Show, right here on the LA Football Network and live on AM the Mightier 1090. He is a reporter for the Sun Devil Source. You can find him on Twitter at Jacob_Rudner. Jacob, what's going on, man? Thanks so much for joining me and helping me break down this SC ASU matchup.
Yeah, Ryan, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being on the show.
Absolutely. No, it's my pleasure. So, well, yeah, I mean, this is an interesting game because I think preseason, I had this circled as potentially deciding the Pac-12 South. I think coming into this year, my expectations, a lot, and many were too, were probably USC, ASU, and Utah were like the big three in the Pac-12 South. And then UCLA, I thought could surprise some people, which they did early on and have since kind of regressed a little bit. But now SC, we all know what's gone on with them. But what's been kind of just the thoughts with ASU, because they do still have a shot sitting at 5-3. So walk us through here in LA that haven't really followed them too closely, kind of what their season's been like up to this point, 8 weeks in.
Yeah, I mean, it like you said, Ryan, it started off with a lot of promise for the Sun Devils. And I think that there were a lot of people who thought that this could be the year that Arizona State makes that run for its first Pac-12 South title since 2013. It gets off to a hot start, loses to BYU in an ugly loss. But other than that, it really did look good. And things were going strong for the Sun Devils in Tempe. And then only recently did the team really start to slow up. They lost to Utah 35-21, completely shut out in the second half of that game. And then last week, they lose 34-21 to Washington State, basically shut out again in the first half until, the final minutes right before halftime. Mm-hmm. So it was a promising start to the season for these Sun Devils. And now they're kind of in this position where they are going to rely on the help of a team like Utah, who's in first place in the Pac-12 South, if they want to have a shot at the title.
Yeah, Utah has been such an interesting team because they started off extremely slow. I believe 0-2 or 1-2 on the year, and then came on extremely strong, and then had a brutal loss to Oregon State, and then looked great against UCLA again last week. So they're kind of up and down, but we know what Kyle Whittingham's going to do there, and we know how well coached they are, and they usually get things going. What's been the thought on Herm Edwards when you look at coaching? Because I think I liked the hire when they brought him in. I thought he was, a good character guy, and I hadn't seen him much in college ranks, but I thought, hey, it could be good fun for the program, jumpstart it. But it seems like they have these high expectations every year that never quite get met. What's the thought in Tempe among the fan base with Herm Edwards? Are they still high on him, or is that seat getting a little warm down there?
I don't know that I would go as far as to say that the seat is getting warm yet necessarily, but I would say that there is a general sense of disappointment as it pertains directly to this year. Just last week alone when ASU played Washington State, by the end of the first quarter, fans were booing. And if you listen closely, there were chants coming from the student section, "Fire Herm." Mm-hmm. So, this was a program that 4 years ago, there were a lot of people who are jumping on the Herm train, the whole you play to win the game thing that starts to go on, and everybody is very excited about the hire. And I think that has cooled to a degree, and even more so in the last couple of weeks with these back-to-back losses. Particularly because, like I said, this was an ASU team that had a lot of potential. It returned a lot of its starters from last year. 10 on defense if you're going to exclude Jermaine Lole, the defensive tackle, who suffered a season-ending injury before the season. And so 10 of 11 there. You have 9 of 11 on the offensive side. It's supposedly the most super seniors, so-called super seniors in the country. So it was one of those teams with high expectations, and to this point, it hasn't really delivered. And I think a lot of that has fallen on Herm in the eyes of the fan base.
Yeah, I've always loved this matchup, period. But I've loved it the last few years because it seems like we have this fun quarterback duel with Keaton Slovis coming from Arizona, and he's the SC quarterback, and then Jayden Daniels coming from Southern California, and he's the ASU quarterback. And Daniels is an interesting quarterback to me. He reminds me a lot, actually, of DTR for the UCLA squad, in the sense that he's extremely athletic, a high profile, high recruit guy that every year seems to like, he's going to make that next step. He's going to take that next leap. And you would know better than me because I don't follow ASU a ton, but it doesn't seem like he ever really quite meets those expectations. What's the vibe on him? How has his season been thus far? Has he developed better as a passer, or is he still kind of just that athletic athlete that can make plays, but he's not a great pocket passer yet?
It's a good question because I think there's a degree in this situation in particular where Daniels has been solid and the people around him have not necessarily lived up to the expectations that they needed to in order to deliver for him. So, for example, against Utah, Daniels looked solid throughout the entirety of that game, but he has receivers dropping passes. And there are certainly some situations where, it is on him for a mistake that's made. But I would say that there have been a lot of mistakes around him that have made him look maybe not necessarily like he's having the best campaign overall. And then at the same time, there is an uptick in interceptions. He has thrown a lot more jeopardy balls than I think we've seen in the last 2 years with him. But the reality is, and you have to kind of look at it this way too, he only really got 4 games as a sophomore at ASU. He comes in as a true freshman and he plays right away. So relative to what a normal starting quarterback who is a year 3 starter at a university might look like, I think that there's an argument to be made that he could be a little bit behind the curve in that regard. So do I think that he has looked solid for the Sun Devils this year? Absolutely. He is tremendous with his legs. He knows how to make a play when he has to make a play. I still do think that he has that spark late in games that we saw with him as a true freshman. But I would also say that there have been some areas where there needs to be improvement, and he has looked below average for a third-year starter for sure.
And obviously this is just all speculation in your opinion, but do you think he'll be back for a senior season? Or do you think he'll forego and take his chances with the draft and the combine and all that?
It's tough. I think that there are a lot of factors that kind of go around that. I mean, it's no secret at this point that there's an NCAA investigation into Arizona State's recruiting practices. And depending on how that plays out, I'm certain that could be a factor in whatever decision he makes.
Totally.
But that being said, he is kind of one of those guys where if he doesn't feel like he has the draft stock that he might have anticipated a year ago or 2 years ago, it's entirely possible that he returns. So I would say it's really up in the air right now. I do think that there are a lot of things that need to play out with the remainder of the season and then over the off season before that can really become clear.
Yeah, a lot of football to be played, and you can certainly increase his draft stock from here until then. And it's interesting because USC has a similar situation in the sense that Keaton Slovis going into this year, I think by many circles was considered probably a first-round pick after the season, and he has certainly struggled to an extent. And then we get the rise of Jackson Dart and what he has done so far, and basically his becoming the face of the team. But we'll still see Slovis a lot throughout the rest of the year. But now it's like, does Slovis go to the draft? Does he transfer and get another year in under his belt? Does he stay with SC and just battle out with Jackson Dart? So a lot of uncertainty for our quarterback situation as well. Jacob, when you look specifically at this game, what is it that, for SC listeners listening to the show that don't know, what is it that that ASU does well, whether it's offensively, defensively, and what do they need to do extremely well in order to beat the Trojans this coming Saturday at 7:30?
Yeah, I'll start offensively, and the clear standout with this Arizona State offense is its running game. There's no denying it. This is a group that was able to run for at least 150 yards in 11 straight regular season games, so that doesn't include its bowl game in 2019. And it has been potent. It's averaging almost 200 yards a game on the ground. It has 3 running backs who are fully capable of carrying by themselves a Division I football team in Daniel Nagata, Diamante Trainum, and Rashad White. And then, Ryan, like you mentioned, Jayden Daniels is a fully capable runner as well. And we've seen him impact games with his legs from the second he got to Arizona State, and that has continued over the course of the last 3 years, if you want to call last year's COVID season a year. Yeah. So offensively, it's going to be about how ASU does on the ground. Will it be able to establish its run game? And then, the other thing with this offense is the Trojans have allowed, I think it's just over 8 yards per pass attempt. And the Sun Devils kind of had this opportunity that they haven't necessarily had in other games where they can start connecting on those short to medium passes with LV Bunkley Shelton, with Ricky Pearsall, with tight end Curtis Hodges, who I should note, we did not see him practice on Wednesday, so it's kind of up in the air about whether or not he'll play. But I do think that there's potential for that kind of dink and dunk passing game. I do think ASU has the potential for the shot plays with play actions if it can get the run game going. But again, the key, it all goes back to whether or not it's able to run the ball offensively.
So I don't know if this is a fair question, I guess, then, but since you mentioned the run game is the important thing, but we've seen in the last few years some great receivers come out of Arizona State with N'Keal Harry and then Brandon Ayuk. Is there a receiver, like a budding star on this team, or is it basically a run first team and kind of role players on the outside?
It's a good question because it's been a topic at ASU all year. Herm Edwards has talked about it on numerous occasions. They don't necessarily feel like they have that ace receiver, like they have that go-to guy right now. I think that the general sense is that it's more of a receiver by staff situation. That being said, Ricky Pearsall has really stood out as the playmaker among that unit. And then I mentioned him a second ago, but Curtis Hodges, ASU's tight end, is having a phenomenal season. He actually leads the team in yards per reception among receivers with at least 2 catches at 20.29, which is a fairly remarkable number. Yeah. So the answer is no, not really right now, but I do think that there are some standout guys.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see how they go, because I feel like USC coming into the year especially has, a lot of talent on the outside in regards to cornerbacks, and they just have underperformed, unfortunately, with Chris Steele and others that have just not played up to that hype that we all thought. And part of that's been coaching and just SC's a mess. I mean, it's a mess out here in LA, and we're just trying to get through the season. I love these kids and I love Coach Williams and what he's done, but he's just been given an unfair situation, unfortunately. So, looking at the SC offense and the ASU defense, obviously I'm sure you know the news, but Drake London, who in my opinion is the best receiver in the country. I know I'm biased in that, but just watching the guy week in and week out, the dude is a baller. He just get the ball in his hands and they at least have a shot. They at least have a chance when he has it. Well, he's done. So you lose a huge piece of this offense that basically when things weren't going right, he was the kind of fix it. He was the Band-Aid that could make things go. But they do have a guy that actually has stepped up in the last few weeks named Keontae Ingram at the running back position, who has kind of changed how this offense goes from, I know they're an air raid offense, but they've actually been more ground and pound as of late with Ingram. He's had over 28 carries the last, 2 games. So how is ASU's rush defense? Because obviously I think it's going to be a heavy run attack for the Trojans this week without having Drake London. So how does ASU, do you think, will actually defend that?
Well, I'll start by saying that I think that Drake London's injury, which is obviously a huge loss for the Trojans, actually presents a fairly interesting wrinkle to this game because it's going to force Arizona State to defend a whole lot more than it probably would have if Drake London was active. Drake London is the clear, obvious focus for this USC offense. The ball is going in his direction more than it will anybody else. And now,
no matter what. 3 guys on and they don't care. Get it to them.
and now, like you said, you have the situation where is USC going to start running the ball? And at the very least, is it going to start, spreading its attack out between its pass and its rush more evenly than we've seen in the last couple of weeks? And I think the answer to that is yes, without your best receiver. So that being said, it will be important for Arizona State to slow down the run. And that's something it hasn't been able to do in the last 2 weeks. It's allowed 374 rushing yards to 2 combined opponents in 2 weeks, Washington State and Utah. And by the way, I will add, Washington State rushes for 166 yards, and Washington State doesn't run the ball.
No, they're at the bottom of the pack.
Exactly. It's another one of those teams that tends to lean through the air. So I do think that ASU's defense is going to have to be sharper than it would have expected in its rushing defense, something that it's struggled to do in recent weeks. And that is going to present a really interesting factor in this game, because the passing attack might not be leaned on as heavily as it was even a week ago for USC.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, some guys I think will step up. Kyle Ford, Taj Washington, I think are 2 good receivers that are fully capable, but you lose a guy like Drake London, it's going to be really hard to move the ball in certain situations. So, Jacob, thanks so much for joining me. I'll get you out of here on this 2-parter. So first, who do you like in this game? I think ASU, I think, is the better football team right now, better coach team. They have more, continuity right now just because it's just a mess with SC. But SC still has talented players, can still surprise people. I think they'll give them a good shot. So who do you like in the game? And then how do you like ASU's chances for the rest of the season, contending for the Pac-12 championship, not just the South, but as a whole?
I will say for this game, I think that Arizona State has the upper edge, and I'm going to pick them to win it. I actually said on our podcast that ASU would win the game 31-24. I'm sticking with that prediction. I think that it's going to be a close game, but I do think that because of the reasons that you just outlined yourself, I would say that ASU has the advantage at the moment. I do think it could unravel, but at the moment, ASU. And then, looking forward to the rest of the season, I think that ASU actually has a pretty tough go of things. This USC game is not a gimme. Even if USC is struggling, it is not a gimme. And then you look at the next 2 weeks for the Sun Devils, and they travel to Washington. They come back to Tempe, and then they travel to Oregon State. So 2 November Pacific Northwest games, and then they come back for the Territorial Cup against Arizona, which is almost an automatic win. I at the moment, I don't think the Sun Devils win the South. I think that Utah has, the head of steam here, and they're hot. And I just don't see from the Sun Devils the same, heat. It just hasn't been there. You lose to Washington State, and you're going into a part of your schedule that, really only gets tougher. So I think that they make it competitive. I don't know that they get there, though.
Yeah, and playing in the Pacific Northwest and Corvallis and whatnot, and in late November is no easy thing for especially a desert team like Arizona State or an LA team for that matter. So it'll be interesting though, and yeah, Utah just looks really good right now. I think that Oregon State game was just an odd loss after how well they had been playing, and they jumped 14-0 and then kind of fell apart in the second half. But Cam Rising's playing good, so be a tough battle, but we never know. That's why they play the games on Saturdays, right? So. Well, Jacob, thank you so much for joining me. Where can everyone find you and your work and all the great stuff you do?
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier in the show. You can find me on Twitter at Jacob_Rudner. And definitely make sure you check us out at sundevilsource.com. We have a lot of great content about Arizona State, and certainly can get you ready for this Pac-12 South matchup from the Arizona State perspective. So, thank you, Ryan, for having me on the show.
There you go. Absolutely. So enjoy the game. If I'm ever out in that area, I'll definitely hit you up, and hopefully we can play a round of 18 or something.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
That's going to do it for the LA Football Show this week. Thank you to our guests for joining on, and especially thank you to you, the listeners who make this all possible. I'm so pumped seeing the growth of the show, so pumped seeing the growth of our network, the LA Football Network, and it's all because of you guys. So thank you so much. Keep tuning in. Keep giving us feedback. Keep helping us grow. Hopefully we will see you on Sunday at Golden Road Brewery in Los Angeles. Like I said, hit me up on Twitter at Ryan Dyrud, LAFB, or you can email me ryan.dyrud@lafbnetwork.com if you want more details on that. But, just show up. Just come show up and hang out with us. So it should be a great time, and we'll get you around, obviously, when you get there. Would love to see you guys there. So enjoy the rest of your Friday, Saturday, whenever you are listening to this. And, let's go Trojans, let's go Chargers, let's go Rams, let's go 3-0 on the weekend for LA Football. This is the LA Football Show. I'm your host, Ryan Dyrud. Be safe, be well. See you all soon. Peace.